Either accept the demotion or leave, Marcus said, leaning back in his ergonomic chair with the confidence of someone who thought he held all the cards. Your current position is being restructured. I sat across from him in his corner office, the same office where I'd attended countless strategy meetings over the past 14 years. The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long shadows across the polished mahogany desk between us. A desk I had helped him choose when he became CEO 3 months ago. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and until this moment, I was the senior financial analyst at Vertex Capital, one of Boston's fastest-growing investment firms. I managed a portfolio worth over $2.8 billion and had consistently outperformed market expectations for more than a decade. But apparently, none of that mattered now. A junior analyst position. I kept my voice steady, professional. That's quite a change from managing our top-tier portfolios. Marcus smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. We're moving in a new direction, Sarah. The market is evolving, and we need to adapt. Fresh perspectives, younger talent. He gestured vaguely with his hand. I'm sure you understand. I did understand. I understood perfectly. Marcus had been gradually pushing out the old guard since taking over from our previous CEO, Robert Hayes, who retired 3 months ago. First, it was restructuring the research department. Then, optimizing client relations. Now this. The junior position comes with a significant pay cut, of course, he continued, sliding a document across the desk. But you'll retain basic benefits. Consider it an opportunity to realign with our new corporate culture. I glanced at the paper without touching it. A 60% salary reduction, removal from all major accounts, no more direct client contact. Everything I had built over 14 years, stripped away with a single document. And if I decline? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Then we'll have to part ways. 2 months severance, standard non-compete clause. He shrugged as if we were discussing lunch options. Your choice. I thought about the countless nights I'd stayed late, analyzing market trends, spotting opportunities others missed. I thought about the Johnston account, how I turned their modest investment into a 300% return over 5 years. I thought about the quarterly investor meetings where my strategies were praised as innovative and groundbreaking. But most importantly, I thought about what Marcus didn't know. I'll take the junior position, I said, reaching for the document. Marcus blinked, clearly surprised by my quick acceptance. He had expected resistance, maybe tears, or at least some negotiation. You will. Of course. I smiled, signing my name with a steady hand. Change is inevitable, right? He recovered quickly, his smugness returning. Exactly. I'm glad you're being reasonable about this. Too many people let ego get in the way of progress. He stood, extending his hand. Report to Direct in the junior analyst pool tomorrow. He'll get you settled. I shook his hand, maintaining eye contact. Thank you for the opportunity. As I walked back to my office, soon to be someone else's, I could feel the stares of my colleagues. News traveled fast in our open floor plan. Some looked away quickly, embarrassed. Others watched with open curiosity, wondering why I wasn't putting up a fight. Madison, my assistant for the past 5 years, was waiting by my desk, her face a mix of concern and anger. Sarah, is it true? They're demoting you? This is ridiculous. It's fine, I said, starting to pack my personal items into a box. Things change. But your numbers are perfect. The Hamilton portfolio alone brought in millions last quarter. And what about the new algorithm you developed? The one that's been outperforming everything else. I paused, a framed photo of my team in my hands. Madison, sometimes the best move isn't the most obvious one. She lowered her voice. Are you sure about this? You could fight it. The board. The board approved this, I interrupted gently. Marcus made sure of that. But trust me, I know what I'm doing. What Marcus didn't know, what no one except Madison and my small team knew, was that the proprietary trading algorithm that had been driving our exceptional returns for the past 2 years wasn't actually company property. I had developed it independently, on my own time, using my own resources. The documentation was clear, the timestamps irrefutable. I had offered to sell it to Vertex last year, but Robert had delayed, saying we should wait until after his retirement. Now it was simply licensed to Vertex, a detail buried in the fine print of agreements that Marcus had clearly never bothered to read. A detail that would become very important very soon. The next morning, I arrived at my new desk in the junior analyst pool. The space was cramped, fluorescent lit, and buzzing with recent college graduates all trying to prove themselves. Derek, the team supervisor, who was at least 10 years my junior, seemed uncomfortable as he showed me around. So, here's your workstation, he said, gesturing to a cubicle half the size of my old desk. We use standard templates for all reports. Nothing fancy, just basic market analysis and data entry. Perfect, I said, setting down my laptop. Where should I start? He handed me a stack of spreadsheets. These need to be updated with yesterday's closing numbers. Just do your best. I could hear the whispers around me. Isn't that Sarah Mitchell? The one who managed the Hamilton account? What happened? I ignored them, focusing on the task at hand. Simple data entry was a far cry from the complex financial modeling I was used to. But that didn't matter. What mattered was staying in the building. Around noon, Madison stopped by my cubicle, her expression still troubled. This is strange, she whispered. Half your old clients have been trying to reach you. Marcus's assistant keeps telling them you're unavailable. I expected that, I said, not looking up from my spreadsheet. Just keep track of who calls. Sarah, she hesitated. The quarterly investors meeting is next week. Marcus is presenting your portfolios as if they were his initiatives. Now I did look up, smiling slightly. Is he? Madison's eyes widened as understanding dawned. You knew he would do this. Marcus is predictable, I said quietly. He sees what he expects to see. Right now, he expects to see a defeated woman in her 40s, accepting a humiliating demotion because she has no other choice. But that's not what you are. No, I agreed. It's not. The week passed slowly. I did my data entry, attended junior team meetings, and pretended not to notice when Marcus paraded potential clients past my cubicle, proudly showing off his modernized workforce. I heard him take credit for my investment strategies in client calls, explaining complex algorithms he didn't understand as if they were his own creation. Each night, I stayed late, supposedly catching up on my new duties. In reality, I was carefully documenting everything. Every time Marcus used my algorithm without attribution, every client meeting where he claimed credit for my strategies, every modification to my original models that he implemented without understanding the underlying mathematics. The quarterly investors meeting was scheduled for Monday morning. I knew Marcus would be presenting my results as his own, showing off the impressive returns my algorithm had generated. He would explain his vision for the company's future based entirely on strategies I had developed. What he didn't know was that I had already spoken to several key investors. Not directly, that would have violated the terms of my new position, but through carefully documented channels established before my demotion. They knew exactly whose work they would be seeing. As I packed up my desk Friday evening, Derek approached my cubicle. Sarah? He seemed nervous. Listen, I know this isn't. Everyone knows you're overqualified for this position. It's fine, Derek, you're doing your job. He lowered his voice. Marcus wants you to prepare some basic charts for Monday's meeting. Nothing complex, just standard return visualizations. He said to keep it simple since, the investors won't want anything too technical. I smiled. Of course. I'll have them ready first thing Monday morning. After he left, Madison appeared with a stack of messages. More clients asking for you. And Sarah? She glanced around before continuing. I overheard Marcus practicing his presentation. He's taking credit for everything, even the risk assessment model you developed last year. Good, I said, powering down my computer. That's exactly what I was counting on. Madison studied my face. The investors' meeting is going to be interesting, isn't it? Very interesting, I agreed. Make sure you have a front row seat. As I drove home that evening, I thought about the past 14 years at Vertex, about the trust I had built with clients, the innovations I had created, the success I had brought to the company. Marcus thought he was eliminating a threat, streamlining operations by pushing out the old guard. Instead, he had given me exactly the position I needed, to watch him hang himself with his own ambition. Monday was going to be very interesting indeed. Monday morning arrived with a tension you could cut with a knife. I walked into the office at precisely 7:30 a.m., carrying the simple charts Derek had requested. Through the glass walls of the conference room, I could see the audiovisual team setting up for the investors' meeting, testing microphones, and adjusting the projector. Marcus was already there, dressed in an expensive new suit, rehearsing his presentation. his voice carried through the partly open door. As you can see, our new strategic direction has yielded unprecedented returns. My innovative approach to risk assessment. I smiled to myself as I settled into my cubicle. Madison appeared moments later, coffee in hand. The investors started arriving early, she whispered. They're in the executive lounge. And Sarah? She paused, glancing around. Robert Hayes is here. That was unexpected. The former CEO rarely attended meetings since his retirement. Interesting, I murmured, keeping my expression neutral. Where's Marcus? Having a minor meltdown in his office, she replied with barely concealed satisfaction. Apparently, some of the investors requested detailed documentation about the trading algorithm's development. He's been frantically calling the tech team. I nodded, typing calmly at my computer. I'm sure he'll figure something out. At 8:45, Derek hurried to my cubicle, a sheen of sweat on his forehead. Sarah, Marcus needs the charts right away, and he wants to know if you have any notes about the algorithm's development process. Just basic stuff, he said, for background. The charts are ready, I said, handing him a USB drive. As for the algorithm notes, I'm afraid those would be in my old files. I don't have access to those anymore. Derek shifted uncomfortably. Right, of course. Sorry. He hurried away, likely to deliver the bad news to Marcus. At 9:15, the junior analysts were instructed to attend the meeting. For exposure to high-level presentations, Derek explained, though I knew Marcus wanted to show off his modernized workforce. We filed into the back of the conference room as the investors took their seats at the long mahogany table. I recognized most of them. Jonathan Pierce from Meridian Capital, Maria Suarez from Global Investments, and of course, Thomas Hamilton, whose portfolio I had managed for the past 8 years. They nodded politely in my direction, their expressions carefully neutral. Robert Hayes sat near the back, looking relaxed in retirement but with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Our gazes met briefly, and I saw the ghost of a smile cross his face. At 9:30 sharp, Marcus strode to the front of the room, confidence oozing from every pore. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this exciting quarterly review. As you know, Vertex Capital has been undergoing strategic modernization. I watched as he clicked through my charts, explaining basic concepts as if he were revealing profound insights. The investors remained stone-faced, occasionally glancing at their tablets. Now let me show you the cornerstone of our new approach, Marcus continued, pulling up a diagram of my algorithm. This proprietary trading system, which I've developed, has revolutionized our risk assessment methodology. Thomas Hamilton raised his hand. Could you explain the mathematical principles behind the algorithm? Marcus faltered slightly. Well, it's quite complex, but essentially it uses advanced metrics to optimize trading patterns. Yes, but specifically, Maria Suarez interjected, how does it calculate market volatility against sector-specific variables? The documentation we requested wasn't very clear on that. I could see beads of sweat forming on Marcus's forehead. The technical details are less important than the results, he deflected. As you can see from these returns. Actually, Jonathan Pierce cut in. The technical details are extremely important. This algorithm is driving 60% of Vertex's current profits. Shouldn't we understand exactly how it works? Marcus tugged at his collar. Of course, and I'd be happy to have my team prepare a detailed breakdown. Why not ask Sarah Mitchell? Thomas Hamilton suggested mildly, since she's here. The room went silent. Marcus froze, his hand hovering over his presentation remote. That won't be necessary. Sarah is currently in a junior position, focusing on basic analytics. Yes, we were surprised to hear about that change, Maria said, especially given her track record with the algorithm's performance. There seems to be some confusion, Marcus tried to recover. The algorithm is proprietary Vertex technology developed under my leadership. Is it? Robert Hayes spoke for the first time, his voice carrying clear authority despite his retired status. Because I recall quite a different conversation about its licensing agreement last year. Marcus's face drained of color. Licensing agreement? I stood up slowly, all eyes turning to me. I'd be happy to clarify, I said calmly. The algorithm was developed independently, using my own resources outside of company time. It's licensed to Vertex under specific terms, which are documented in the agreement signed last year. That's impossible, Marcus snapped. All work product belongs to the company. Usually, yes, I agreed. But I have extensive documentation, including development timestamps and the original licensing agreement. I believe the investors requested those materials last week. Did you not receive them? Marcus's expression shifted from confusion to dawning horror. I continued, my voice steady. The license agreement includes specific terms about attribution and modification, terms that have been violated repeatedly over the past 3 months. The room erupted in murmurs. Are you saying the company's primary trading algorithm isn't actually Vertex property? Jonathan asked. And that its use over the past 3 months has violated licensing terms? Maria added. That's correct, I replied. I have all the documentation here, including recordings of meetings where these violations were discussed. Marcus slammed his hand on the podium. This is ridiculous. She's just bitter about her demotion. The board approved all my decisions. The board, Robert Hayes interrupted, approved what they were told. Did you mention the licensing agreement, Marcus, or the fact that Sarah developed the algorithm independently? Thomas Hamilton stood. I think we need to see all the documentation. Now, and I mean the original files, not your summaries, Marcus. What followed was 2 hours of detailed review. I presented my original development logs, the licensing agreement, and recordings of meetings where Marcus had claimed credit for my work. The investors passed the documents around, their expressions growing increasingly grave. This is a serious breach, Maria finally said. The algorithm generating most of Vertex's current returns could be pulled at any time, legally. And the recent modifications, Jonathan added, were made without consulting the original developer, violating the terms of use. Do you understand the liability you've created? Marcus had collapsed into a chair, his face ashen. I didn't. I never saw. You never bothered to look, Robert Hayes said quietly, too busy modernizing to understand what you were dismantling. The investors huddled together, speaking in low voices. Finally, Thomas Hamilton turned to me. Sarah, would you be willing to maintain the algorithm's license with Vertex under new management? I pretended to consider this. With appropriate terms and recognition, yes. Good, Maria nodded. Because I believe we'll be calling an emergency board meeting this afternoon. Marcus, I suggest you contact your lawyer. As the room began to clear, Robert Hayes approached my desk. Well played, he said softly. You knew this would happen. I knew Marcus would try to take credit for something he didn't understand, I replied. He made it easy by never bothering to read the fine print. Robert smiled. The board will need a new CEO. Someone who actually understands both the technology and the client relationships. I gathered my things, ready to leave my cramped cubicle for the last time. That sounds like an interesting opportunity. Madison was waiting by the elevator, barely containing her glee. Sarah, that was brilliant. But why did you accept the demotion? Why not fight it immediately? I stepped into the elevator, holding the door. Because sometimes, Madison, the best way to win isn't to fight. It's to let your opponent think they've already won. As we descended to the lobby, I thought about the past 2 weeks. About Marcus's smug certainty, his casual dismissal of my contributions, his rush to claim credit for work he didn't understand. He had seen what he expected to see. A woman past her prime, accepting defeat. He never saw the trap until it was too late. The next morning, I arrived at the office to find security guards posted outside Marcus's former office. The door was locked, the blinds drawn. A company-wide email had gone out late last night announcing his immediate departure to pursue other opportunities. Corporate speak for being fired. I was still at my junior analyst desk, but the atmosphere had shifted dramatically. Gone were the whispers and pitying glances. Now people stopped by constantly, offering congratulations or explaining that they never really trusted Marcus anyway. Madison appeared with my morning coffee, grinning. The board's been in emergency sessions since 6 a.m., and you'll never guess who's been asking about you. Who? Every major client we have. Apparently, word got out about yesterday's meeting. The Hamilton Group is threatening to pull their entire portfolio unless you're reinstated as their manager. I took a sip of coffee, hiding my smile. Is that so? Sarah. Derek hurried over, looking flustered. The board wants to see you. Right now. The boardroom was packed when I entered. The same investors from yesterday's meeting were present, along with all 12 board members. Robert Hayes sat at the far end, looking satisfied. Thomas Hamilton gestured to an empty chair at the head of the table. Please, Sarah, have a seat. I did, folding my hands calmly on the polished surface. The board chairman, William Pierce, cleared his throat. Ms. Mitchell, we've spent the morning reviewing your documentation, the licensing agreement for the algorithm, your development logs, and the various violations that occurred under Marcus's leadership. I nodded but said nothing. We've also received calls from 17 major clients, all insisting on speaking with you directly. The Hamilton Group has made their position quite clear about their portfolio management. I'm happy to help with the transition to whoever you choose to manage those accounts, I offered professionally. Maria Suarez laughed. That's not why we're here, Sarah. We're here to offer you the CEO position. Despite expecting this, I kept my expression neutral. I see. The board has voted unanimously, William continued. You understand both the technical and relationship aspects of our business. You've demonstrated remarkable strategic thinking, and quite frankly, you're the only one who fully understands the algorithm that's driving our success. And, Robert Hayes added with a slight smile, you've proven you know how to handle difficult situations with grace and intelligence. I looked around the table, meeting each person's eyes. Before I accept, I have some conditions. Of course, William nodded. Name them. First, my team stays intact. No more arbitrary dismissals or demotions based on age or cultural fit. Agreed. Second, I want Madison promoted to Chief of Staff. She's earned it. Done. Finally, I said, leaning forward slightly, I want to implement a new development program. One that pairs experienced analysts with younger team members. Real mentorship, not just buzzwords about fresh perspectives. Thomas Hamilton smiled. Focusing on substance over style? How refreshing. The paperwork was signed within the hour. By lunch, another company-wide email had gone out, announcing my appointment as CEO. I stood in my new office, Marcus's old office, looking out over the Boston skyline. Madison knocked on the doorframe. Your first executive meeting starts in 10 minutes, and HR needs your input on Marcus's replacement as head of sales. Actually, I said, turning from the window, I think Derek might be ready for more responsibility. He's young, yes. But he showed integrity during this whole situation. Set up a meeting with him tomorrow. Derek? Madison raised an eyebrow. The one who supervised you in the junior pool. He was just following orders, I pointed out. And he was uncomfortable with how Marcus handled things. That shows good judgment. Later that afternoon, as I was reviewing the damage Marcus had done to our client relationships, Robert Hayes stopped by. Getting settled in? He asked, taking a seat across from me. Still assessing the situation. Marcus made quite a mess of things in just 3 months. Robert nodded. That's what happens when you prioritize image over substance. But that's not why I'm here. He pulled out a folder. I owe you an apology. For what? For not pushing harder on the algorithm licensing agreement before I retired. If I had, maybe all this could have been avoided. I shook my head. Or Marcus would have found another way to cause problems. Men like him always do. Perhaps, Robert agreed. But I've been thinking about why you handled it the way you did. You could have fought the demotion immediately, gone straight to the board with the licensing agreement. That would have made me look defensive, I said. Emotional. Marcus would have spun it as proof that I couldn't handle change. Instead, you let him hang himself with his own arrogance. He did most of the work for me, I admitted. Every time he took credit for the algorithm, every time he dismissed my contributions, he was just adding evidence to my case. Robert laughed. You know, when I hired you 14 years ago, I had a feeling you'd end up in this office someday. I just didn't expect it to happen quite like this. After you left, I spent some time walking through the office. Analysts looked up from their desks as I passed, offering tentative smiles. The junior pool, where I'd spent 2 humiliating weeks, was buzzing with energy. I stopped at my old cubicle, now empty. Derek was nearby, still looking nervous around me. Ms. Mitchell. Sarah is fine, Derek. Do you have a minute to talk? His eyes widened. Of course. Good, because I think you might be ready for a bigger role here. How would you feel about heading up our sales department? He stared at me, shocked. But, I supervised your demotion. I made you do basic data entry. You did your job, I corrected. And you showed discomfort with an unethical situation. That's exactly the kind of integrity we need in leadership. As I walked back to my office, I could feel the shift in the building's energy. The fear and uncertainty of Marcus's tenure were fading, replaced by something more sustainable, something built on respect rather than intimidation. Madison was waiting at my door with a stack of messages. The Hamilton Group wants to schedule a dinner to discuss expanding their portfolio. 3 other major clients want meetings this week, and she smirked. Marcus's assistant dropped off his personal items, including his notes about the algorithm, which make it hilariously clear he never understood how it worked. I smiled, taking the messages. File those notes with the rest of the documentation, just in case. You don't think he'll try anything? Marcus isn't stupid enough to fight this, I said, settling behind my desk. He knows the evidence would destroy his career even more thoroughly than it already has. Looking out over the city as the afternoon sun painted the buildings in gold, I thought about how quickly things had changed. 2 weeks ago, I had stood in the same office, accepting a humiliating demotion with a smile. Now I sat behind the desk, not because I had fought and clawed my way here, but because I had been patient, strategic. Sometimes the best revenge isn't fighting back, it's letting your opponents defeat themselves. 6 months had passed since the investors' meeting that changed everything. I sat in my office, reviewing our quarterly reports with a sense of satisfaction. The numbers told a story that even Marcus couldn't have denied, though I'd heard he was now working at a much smaller firm in Chicago, having found his opportunities in Boston surprisingly limited. Madison knocked on my door, tablet in hand. The final numbers for Key 3 are in. We're up 42% from last year. And the new mentorship program? Extremely successful. The junior analyst's performance has improved significantly since we paired them with senior team members. She smiled. Turns out experience actually does count for something. I nodded, thinking about how different things were now. Derek had excelled as head of sales, bringing a combination of energy and integrity to the role that had earned him respect across the company. The toxic culture Marcus had tried to create, pitting young against old, had been replaced by genuine collaboration. Oh, and Sarah, Madison added, Marcus's old firm called. Apparently, he's been claiming he developed a trading algorithm similar to ours. They want to verify some details. I couldn't help but laugh. Send them the documentation. All of it. Let them see exactly what happens when you try to take credit for other people's work. Just then, Thomas Hamilton appeared in my doorway. Sarah, do you have a minute? Of course, Thomas. Come in. He settled into one of the chairs across from my desk, looking pleased. I just came from a meeting with several other major investors. We've been watching Vertex's performance since you took over. And we're impressed, not just with the returns, though those are exceptional. We're impressed with how you've transformed the culture here. No drama, no flashy announcements, just solid performance and genuine teamwork. I smiled. That was the goal. Well, it's working. Which is why we want to discuss expanding our investments significantly. He slid a proposal across my desk. The numbers made even me blink. That's substantial, I said carefully. It is, but we trust you, Sarah. More importantly, we trust your approach. What happened with Marcus taught us all a valuable lesson about substance over style. After Thomas left, I walked through the office, something I did regularly now. The floor buzzed with productive energy. In the junior analyst pool, now reorganized into collaborative teams, experienced professionals worked alongside younger colleagues, sharing knowledge rather than competing. I stopped at a desk where Jessica, one of our senior analysts, was explaining a complex market pattern to 2 junior team members. 6 months ago, under Marcus, she had been on the verge of being phased out for someone younger. How's the training going? I asked. Jessica beamed. These 2 are quick learners, and they ask good questions, which is essential in this business. One of the juniors, Michael, looked up. Jessica's been incredible. I learned more in 2 months with her than I did in my entire first year. This was what Marcus had never understood. Experience wasn't a liability. It was an asset, one that needed to be nurtured and shared. Back in my office, I found Robert Hayes waiting for me. Just thought I'd stop by, he said, see how my old company is doing. Better than ever, I replied, handing him our latest reports. He whistled softly as he reviewed the numbers. Impressive, though I'm more impressed by what I saw out there. He gestured toward the office floor. The energy is different now. Positive. Collaborative. Amazing what happens when you value people for their actual contributions instead of their age or their ability to use buzzwords. Robert chuckled. Speaking of which, I heard about Marcus's latest attempt to reinvent himself. Trying to claim he has his own trading algorithm? Yes, that news reached me too. Not very smart of him. No, I agreed. But then, he never was as smart as he thought he was. Robert studied me for a moment. You know, when all this happened, when he demoted you, most people would have fought back immediately. They would have let anger drive their actions. That rarely works out well, I said. Anger makes you reactive, makes you miss opportunities. Like the opportunity to let someone expose their own incompetence. I smiled. Exactly. Later that afternoon, I had my monthly video call with the board. William Pierce, the chairman, was practically glowing as he reviewed our performance. Sarah, the board couldn't be more pleased. The Hamilton Group's new investment is just the beginning. Word is spreading about how Vertex has transformed under your leadership. Thank you, William, but it's really about the team. Everyone here contributed to this success. Yes, but it took the right leader to make it happen. Someone who understands that true innovation comes from experience and collaboration, not just from chasing the latest trends. After the call, Madison brought in one last piece of news for the day. Sarah, remember those clients Marcus was courting right before? Everything. The ones he was offering those questionable terms to. Of course. They just signed with us. Standard terms, no special treatment. They said they'd rather work with a firm that values stability and expertise over flash and promises. I nodded, thinking about how different things could have been. If I had let anger guide me, if I had fought Marcus's demotion publicly, I might have won in the short term but lost the opportunity to expose the deeper problems in his leadership. Instead, I had stayed calm, documented everything, and let him demonstrate exactly why he shouldn't be in charge. That evening, as I prepared to leave, I stopped by Derek's office. He was on the phone with a client, confidently discussing strategy in a way that showed how much he'd grown in 6 months. Great work today, I said when he finished the call. He smiled. Thanks, Sarah. You know, I still feel bad about before, when you were in the junior pool. Don't, I said firmly. You taught me something valuable during those 2 weeks. What's that? That integrity matters more than position. You were uncomfortable with what was happening, even though you thought I was just another employee being phased out. That's why you're in this office now. As I drove home that night, I thought about Marcus, probably sitting in his smaller office in Chicago, still trying to prove he was the visionary he claimed to be. I thought about how he tried to dismiss 14 years of experience as outdated, how he'd assumed that younger automatically meant better. But mostly, I thought about the lesson he'd never understood. True leadership isn't about making yourself look good. It's about bringing out the best in others, regardless of their age or background. My phone buzzed with a text from Madison. Just heard Marcus's new algorithm pitch failed spectacularly. Apparently, when asked to explain how it worked, he still couldn't do it. I smiled but didn't respond. I didn't need to. Marcus's actions were still creating their own consequences, just as they had 6 months ago when he smugly demoted me to that junior analyst position. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. It's rising above, building something better, and letting your success speak for itself. And as Vertex's latest numbers proved, success speaks very loudly indeed.